Hello and welcome to the Tech on Toast podcast. My name's Chris Fletcher and this is season 12. Tech on Toast podcast is serving up fresh chats with the sharpest minds in hospitality and tech. If you're looking to level up your ops, streamline your service, or just sprinkle a little tech magic into your business, you've come to the right place. And guess what? Our partners Lightspeed are back this season to look after us. They're the EPOS and payments platform helping over 165,000 businesses. Businesses such as Big Mama, Mildred's, Mallow, and Cubit House. They'll help you scale at, you guessed it, the speed of light. See what I did there? With real-time insights, faster transactions, and slick integrations with people like OpenTable, Xero, Muse, and many more, Lightspeed's unified platform is built to boost your performance and turn your tables quicker than you can say flat white, extra hot. So, if you need fast funding, check out Lightspeed Capital. No hidden fees, no interest charges, just smart support when you need it. If you're curious about all of this, just head over to lightspeed.co.uk/tech-on-toast and book yourself a free demo. You won't regret it. Now, enough of that. Ready for the next episode? Let's go. Welcome to the Tech on Toast podcast, and today I'm delighted to be joined by JP Kloppers, Managing Director at Omnisient.
That's right.
Did I get the reason I was saying it with some accent is because I was trying to get it right. Did I get it right?
Omnisient, yes.
Perfect. Welcome, JP. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. And where are you based? Are you based in London?
I live just west of London, near Reading, very far west of London, but we're based in London. Yes.
You're an office down here, so you've travelled in just for the podcast, or
I've got another meeting afterwards.
I don't know what it's like. I've been inside. I haven't bothered going out since lunchtime.
It's beautiful out there.
Is it beautiful or too much?
No, never too much. You'll never hear me complaining about the weather. If there's sunshine, I'm out there.
Well, and because you were telling me you're Dutch and South African.
South African
Dutch,
and a long time back Dutch. Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Before we get into talking about Omnisient and what you guys do there, let's just learn a bit more about you. Tell me a bit about your background, because you've got a few blots on your copy that I spotted. I was like, oh, I know those companies. So yeah, tell us about your journey a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. So my background, I'm an engineer. So a dangerous one at that. Never worked as an engineer. Always gravitated more towards the entrepreneurial journey. Came here 7 years ago to the UK with a business I was running, which at that stage we were doing social media analytics.
Right.
Helping understand what's driving. Why do customers love you? Why do they hate you? Based on what they're saying on social media.
That'd be quite depressing, I imagine.
Well, no, actually, it's
enlightening. Sorry,
it's enlightening. It's an unfiltered, raw version of the truth, and sometimes a little bit too true. Anyway, yeah. we were helping brands then understand how to position themselves accordingly. So that was what brought me here originally. Then COVID hit, and so we needed to pivot. So I then moved to Yo-Yo Wallet, which is where I originally got into the hospitality game.
What was that like? Because you weren't in hospitality prior to that. It was kind of a more generic.
Yeah, so at that stage, I joined as part of the acquisition. Yo-Yo was acquired by Taya at that stage. They're called something else, but that doesn't matter. And they were rationalizing two payments and loyalty businesses. There was Yo-Yo here, and there was a company in South Africa called Y Group. Yeah. Those two were both acquired at the same time. And as part of bringing those two businesses together, I came on board as the UK MD to run that merger, if you like, both of the businesses together and then the businesses into Taya.
Wow. And how was your first foray into hospitality?
It was great. Met brilliant people. I think it's an industry which is just, it's got great people and just.
I think we're quite emotive, aren't we? We're quite, some would say hard work, but in a good way.
Not hard work. Yeah, I think everybody, certainly at that stage, and I think it's still at the moment, is trying to do what's best both for the business and for the customer. Yeah. And when you're at the technology side, there's just so much room to do that well and to do it badly. Yeah,
I think that's a struggle, isn't it? That those two choices there of doing what's best, because I think still the industry is kind of working out what it wants to do. Some people have run down the tech road quite far. Some are still very much at the start of that journey, thinking, don't know if I trust it yet.
That's right. And I mean, the other hat that I wear is looking at AI adoption and how companies use large language models, and it's exactly the same. This is this powerful force that exists out there.
So is that something you do outside of your current role, or is it?
I've got two consulting jobs. So
right. Okay.
I consult as the MD for Omnisient, and then I also work as an AI adoption kind of specialist, looking at, because what we did in the social media world is we had a crowd of thousands of people that worked on our platform to train our machines on how to understand social media. So my heart has always been in this world
Yeah.
of how do people and machines work well together, and data is obviously at the intersection of those two. But what's now happened over the past 2 years with the advent of large language models is it's put that ability on steroids.
Yeah.
And so suddenly companies are thinking, what do we do? So on the Omnisient side, we've built large language models into the database so that a customer can easily query their data and say, how many cans of soda have we sold in the last week? And before you would have a data scientist that needs to answer that question.
Through that, yeah.
Now you can just ask a large language model that can go fetch that data and tell you.
Wow. That's changed the because I didn't know that. I mean, that's great. I've just found that out on the podcast, which is really cool, actually. And because I think I've got a bit of an obsession with it as well at the moment. I'm probably not as scientific about it as you are with AI, but I am really on that journey of understanding or helping the industry understand where they need to get to, or what it can do for them. And I think that's, like social media, actually, like even before that, when the internet came, there was a period of time where people were like, I don't need a website. Why would I need a website? Well, I don't need social media. That's for kids, and then obviously it changes and people realize there's real benefit to it. I think AI is that next kind of change.
It's going to be huge, yeah.
Yeah, where people are kind of on the cusp of it thinking, okay, I now think the robots aren't coming yet, but I understand that this thing can help me. If you had to percentagize where you think, I'm totally off script if you don't mind that. Is that all right?
Let's go,
yeah, because someone else wrote these probably anyway. So if you had to percentagize where you think people are at, just generally with AI in terms of they're 10% adopted and understand it and totally can see the use cases, are we even there yet?
5%.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing some work with a listed company. They've got 12,000 engineers wrestling with and for an engineer, it's a critical thing to wrestle with now. How do you become more efficient and more effective at your job? And that's at the very forefront, and they even are trying to figure this out. You bring that back to hospitality. It's this thing that's out there. I like to think about it in kind of 3 stages. Everybody's looking at the middle one, which is the large language model. Yeah. And every few weeks, there's a new version of OpenAI releases something, and
it's literally mind-blowing.
DeepSeek releases something, and then you've got Sora, and now you can do all sorts of things. What people aren't thinking about is how do we actually use our own data? Yeah. So for any hotel or restaurant or coffee shop, they're sitting on a mountain of their own data, which they're never going to put into the public space. Your customer names, what they bought, but you want to be able to train your own model on what that data is. So
I was literally having this conversation. We had the operations director in this morning from a company called The Other House, which is just one property in London at the moment. They're going to go to 3 quite quickly. It's like a private members residential club with rooms. And she was saying they use Muse as their PMS. And she was saying, we got talking about AI because every bloody episode does now. But we got talking about it, and she said, actually, she goes, I haven't got a clue about this stuff, but I know now on Muse, I can ask about a customer. So if JP was staying there, she can ask about JP, and it will tell me everything about you, what you like to order, what complaints you've had, what feedback you've given, what time you like to arrive, what car you like to arrive in, that kind of stuff. So and she says, I'm very, within a touch of a button, we have an instant profile of a person standing in front of us. She goes, which obviously years ago we'd rely on the concierge or the full-time receptionist who's been there 5 years, because now they're not there 5 years anymore. 5 minutes is probably a more realistic life cycle for a hospitality employee. So I think that's those use cases, I think, are quite interesting, that there's many different ways it can be used. But are you seeing people, do they find that difficult in applying it? Is that where you think we're at?
So the difficulty is getting your data into the model. So that's both in fine-tuning the model and then having some kind of a reference system that the model can go back and find the information about the customer. So that's kind of the one end. And then on the other end would be the use case. How does this manifest to the employee or the customer or the manager or the end user? And that's typical. So to use an example, if you're a lawyer, you're sitting with years of cases that you're not going to give to somebody else because that's your IP. But to be able to quickly reference that and say, in this new case that I'm now looking at, what are the 10 that are relevant to it, and how does it apply to this particular set of circumstances? Machines
so it's not just the actual data, it's the reasoning behind the data as well, potentially, of matching that to the subject. That's a really good example.
Or if you're, I was chatting to a wedding venue about 2 weeks ago, and they run a wedding venue out near where we live, 20 employees, they do around 22 events a month. So a month, so a bit, fairly big scale. But not big enough that they have an IT department. But maybe we'll just, as you do, talk about what do you do, what do I do, and so talking about this and talking about how actually if you have your own data that's in the large language model, your employees now suddenly don't need to do that mind-numbing, I've answered this question for the 1,000th time. Yes. Actually, if you plug it into your email, it can look at this question coming in. Here's a draft of how you have responded every time before. You've now saved that employee 80% of their time, freeing them up to actually do the kinds of things that is interesting to them.
It's crazy. And the potential impact, I mean, I don't want to get too lofty for the world, but let's just stay in hospitality potentially. So the potential impact in terms of, if you start with the real cynical part, cost saving, so removing humans doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing, which we've had to do because there was no other way.
Yeah.
I believe there's a huge, I mean, it's controversial because obviously these people's jobs we're talking about, and I'm sure you can redeploy labor, but there is a big saving, isn't there, to be had, particularly in central, I suppose, I want to say fat, but areas where we're a bit fat and we've got too much labor.
Yeah. Or where you've got, a team of 10 people doing one job. That's customer service.
Yeah.
Suddenly you can do a lot of that work using a machine. And so either those 10 people now can go and do other things, and you can have sort of higher value work that they're deployed to. Obviously, it depends industry to industry what that looks like. But yes, on the cynical side, it could be that people lose their jobs.
Yeah, well, it's the reality. I mean, I think it's the reality of new things that come, that things change, right?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
The smart people see that change and coming and kind of move to adapt to it. And I think for businesses that are seeing that opportunity, because it is every crisis or every new thing is an opportunity.
And my deep conviction is that people matter and machines should make us better, not worse.
Yeah.
So, and that's the future I want to fight for.
Yeah. And I think in our industry particularly, that everyone's on that boat. I think most people are. I think the one elephant in the room is that the headwinds are constantly bad in terms of economy. It's constantly a challenge. And I think if there's an opportunity to save money because we can do something better, and I think the big thing here is the one thing that no one really talks about AI is consistency. Yeah. That reality that you're going to get the same information from me and from me, the robot, every time I give it to you, no matter what day it is, if I've had a bad day, whatever it is, you're going to have the same information. I think that's not the same with humans. And I know in certain instances we like that, but when you're providing compliance or health and safety or whatever it might be, you want to be consistent.
Flight information.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. Telling pilots what to do if there's a storm coming. Yeah. But it's true, isn't it? Yeah. That I don't think that, I think the consistency. When I was in operations, area managers exist, I think, because we haven't got AI, or because, I mean, they're probably all listening to me going, thanks, mate. But when I was an area manager, my job was really just to manage the information around me and make sure the team's got it. Obviously, there's a bit more around that. I was looking after individuals, but
I think that middle management layer is going to be radically impacted by AI.
Yeah.
Because you can now have, in the system that I've described, where you've got your own data, you can put in your own performance information. These are our key objectives for the next year. That's broken down by quarter. This is by team. This is by individual. Then you can have a system that's listening to every meeting, which we have, the otters of the world.
Yeah.
That can automatically then go, okay, how is this team tracking against their key objectives? The manager no longer needs to do endless performance
and
reviews.
They hate it.
They hate it.
Yeah.
But the machine can put all of that together and say, here's how we're tracking, and then you can have the conversation that you need to around, okay, how do we course correct? These things have now emerged. We're struggling in this area. Like, what do we need to do? So those kinds of things, I think, are just going to make people way better if they use the tools well.
Yes.
If they don't, then...
Well, I think it's the same as everything, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And I think you mentioned data before. The risk is for all these people that have data, how good is that or relevant is that data or how clean is it? And when I say clean, I mean, has that customer left them? Are they going to get put into the mix? Because my worry is that they're going to chuck all of that data into some bot and they're going to do something and start plowing out stuff to people that don't even love them anymore, don't want to hear from them. So there's a bit of that going on. But I think that's the same as any use of data, right? It needs cleaning up. I need to talk about Omnisient because
this is a good segue back to Omnisient.
because I deliberately got excited about AI because I am really invested in it and want to know what's going on. Tell me a little bit about what it does and how it represents, and obviously it's quite closely linked to what we just spoke about.
That's
the data piece anyway.
That's right. Yeah. And at the core of it is
that's why I did it, JP. I deliberately led you down a path.
Thank you.
Not.
Well done. So what Omnisient does, it's a data collaboration platform that allows two or more parties to share their data, and I use share in inverted commas because core to the platform is that nobody ever gives their data to somebody else.
Yes.
But the kind of core use case that we were born out of was allowing a bank to build a credit model from grocery data. So where, I just moved here, the Experian or TransUnion know nothing about me, the bank won't give me credit, not even a telco will give me a cell phone because they don't know who I am.
You've got no background.
And it takes a long time to build up that credit profile, a few years. I think it was about 3 years before I could get a cell phone contract.
JP was quiet.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas your grocery data, that's very, very recent,
and I suppose
highly predictive of your financial capacity.
A lot of patterns emerge quite quickly.
Yeah, and what we've learned, so the kind of use case, Omnisient was born in South Africa and expanded here, headquartered in the UK now. And what we learned in South Africa is that grocery data is highly predictive of financial capacity. And so where there were the big retailer that we work with is called ShopRite. They had 8 million customers that the banks didn't know who they were. No credit information about them. Using their grocery data, they were able to see, hang on, 3 million of these should be in the financial system.
Wow.
They can afford credit. It's not going to be bad for them. They can kind of get their foot into the financial, whether it's buying a house or getting a loan for a car. Like all of these things help people progress in their lives. But if you have no credit score, you don't have access to that system.
It's crazy.
And so this data collaboration enabled the bank to appropriately and responsibly lend to customers that could afford it. For the customer, they suddenly like, wow, I can now, where I've been denied before, I've applied for a loan to buy a house. The bank said no because they don't know who I am. Now I can use my grocery data to do that. So that's kind of the hero use case, if you like, that Omnisient was born out of. As that world has evolved, so the platform has become more and more useful to allow maybe not non-endemic brands to collaborate. So in the hospitality space, you would have a car rental company collaborating with a hotel. That's an obvious connection. What you wouldn't have is an insurer collaborating with a hotel to say, or with the airline to say, let's provide travel insurance.
And I saw, I don't know, this a total sidebar, but on Dragon's Den, there's a TV. I don't know if you know the TV show Dragon's Den. There was a young two girls on there who'd built something for rental. Same story. People couldn't rent properties in London because they had no background and they had no credit history, and they were building exactly the same thing. So they were trying to build a credit history based on their other spending to allow them. So a very similar story, I think, to allow them access to that. It got poo-pooed. There was something in it that they were saying the landlords wouldn't buy into it or whatever it was. I can't remember what it was, but it was a very similar story. And just out of interest, on the South African side of things, is that still going? Is that something that so they use that?
So in South Africa now, most of the retailers on the platform, all of the banks, all of the insurers, medical aid companies, health companies, and this is where the kind of beauty of this ecosystem comes into sort of a league of its own. We have a concept of a data seller, so that would be the retailer. In our conversation, it might be the restaurant or the hotel. Somebody who has customer data and says, we think this is valuable to somebody.
Make it work.
What the platform allows them to do is to put it into the platform in a completely anonymous way. So they encrypt any customer data before it leaves their environment. So even if somebody hacked Omnisient, they would never get access to their customer data. It never left. So that's why I use share in inverted commas, because it's encrypted. So once it's in our platform, even the grocer doesn't know who that customer is. But the bank or the insurer can look at that data and put their own data in and do a distinct match at a customer level, but nobody knows who the customer is because it's all encrypted. So the bank can then look at that. So let's say a restaurant had their data in there, and the bank is saying, we've got a credit card offer for high net worth individuals, as an example. They could look at the customer data from the restaurant's loyalty program and dedupe it, say, well, actually these 10,000 customers are already ours. But actually if we look at these 10,000 customers that we've got, these 2,000 are good customers to us. Who else behaves like these 2,000 customers at the restaurant? And they can then go to the restaurant with an offer to say, we'd like to partner with you. We're prepared to pay you X to do a combined offer to your customers. And once all parties agree, then the restaurant can then take that offer to their customers. But they're always in control to say, is this in the best interest of our customers? Do we have the right to use their data in this way? All of those things.
But the anonymous part makes it so unique, doesn't it? Because the fact that you can go along and say, look, here is my bunch of data. This is what we've got. And because the fact is, they're sitting on this data that has value that they probably don't know about.
That's right.
Or they're not thinking about the value that it has. Maybe
it's not their business.
Yeah,
and it's similar for the retailer. A grocery retailer is not thinking about why is our data valuable to a bank or an insurer.
Yeah,
and what the Omnisient platform allows them to do is to, at no human cost to them, at no risk to their customers, and at no expense, put their data into a platform.
It's a no-brainer.
Exactly.
I think you might have the best job ever.
The bank can then have their data scientists look at this data and say, and that's the role Omnisient plays, is to bring both the buyer and the seller together.
Almost like the broker.
Yeah.
Data broker type thing.
And in that environment have we call it a machine learning environment.
Yeah.
Jupyter Notebooks as the platform, where a data scientist can then build quite a complicated lookalike model if they want to, which takes the credit information from the bank or the insurer, overlays that with the restaurant or the retailer or the grocer or whoever the seller is, and then look at, okay, what kind of offers can we come up with out of this data? They can never action it. All they can do is go to the data seller and say, we'd like to.
We should do this because you've got
relevant. We did.
Yeah.
Once they agree, then they can,
And I'm probably shooting the wind here. What do the commercials look like? I mean, what potentially, what kind of offer would you think of with a card provider?
Well, it depends very much on what that offer is. So if it's a mortgage, they'd probably be prepared to pay £1,000 to bring you a mortgage customer. If it's a credit card, maybe £100, £200, who knows?
I thought so. Is this like data mining? But someone was talking about they've got a platform where they're data mining, and they were offering to restaurants, and maybe I don't know if I understood him properly, but they were offering to restaurants a sort of similar thing, saying, look, you've got a bunch of data you're sitting on, give it to us, we'll mine it, whatever that means, and then we'll unearth diamonds, as it would be, or unearth quality for you, or value for you.
You could use that term. I think the key thing in the Omnisient platform is they never give up control.
Right.
So the danger with giving your data to somebody that's going to mine it is you relinquish your IP.
Yeah. So someone, regardless of what they say, someone could quite easily.
Yeah, it could be, or they find value and then they can action it.
Yeah.
Where once you've encrypted it, so the different degrees of you sharing or collaborating or mining that data. A key thing is that encryption layer where you've never given up your IP, you've never given up access, and you've never given up control. And at any stage, they can remove any of those to say we're no longer comfortable with this partnership. And
is there a common theme when they're doing, when not just necessarily hospitality, but is there a common theme when people are owning their IP and giving up the data? Giving up's not the right word, but sharing.
Yeah,
I've got my
inverted
camera. Sharing their data. Is there any kind of commonality that comes out of that when they discover what they've shared, that they're like, oh wow, that wow moment where they're like, okay, we've actually got some really useful data here that could
absolutely. Yeah. Is
it very rare that you don't get that?
If you don't have the counterparty, so when the kind of ecosystem's in its early stages, you need buyers and sellers.
Yes.
And if you only have one buyer and they're not interested, then
that's very true. Yeah, that's a crap deal.
Yeah, exactly. But the other lens to look at it through is, for a restaurant or a hotel, they would have their own bank that they bank with. So that would be another area where they can collaborate, where currently you can't upload your customer data to the bank and say, who else at the bank looks like our great customers? Let's do a partnership with our own retail bank to put an offer to other retail bank customers to say, come to our restaurant, come to our hotel. Let's do some.
Is there is this quite a lot of an education piece then for the people's data you want to share?
Because that's a big part of the job is just talking about the art of the possible and how everybody knows that data is valuable. Everybody's nervous about giving it away, and so bringing those two together. So I think education's key. It's why we engage the regulator. For the regulator, this is critical. To have the privacy of the individual protected while not stifling the economy.
Yeah, it's the number one. It's their flag in the sand, isn't it?
And that's what Omnisient does. It brings
Yeah.
those two things together to say we're not going to compromise somebody's privacy. That's sacrosanct. But we also want to create a data economy where businesses can thrive.
Yeah,
And so having a responsible platform to do that in is...
It does seem crazy, doesn't it, that we sit on all this data and then it doesn't... people see value. I mean, sometimes in hospitality, most people talk about CRM data as email marketing or sending something out on your birthday or whatever it might be to get a return. But actually, this is a very different conversation. This is about the demographic of your business or the people. Because there's different types of data. Am I psychographic? Am I right in saying there's different types of data that you can get out of that, or different types of learnings you can get out of it? And I think understanding those are really key for everything, right? For marketing purposes or whatever you might want to do.
Exactly. I mean, if you're running a restaurant, how valuable would it be to go to your bank and know that actually you've got customers who might live close to you or live far away? That doesn't matter. But it would be great to know that, do your customers also go to other restaurants?
Yeah.
What types of restaurants do they go to? Where else do they spend their money? In an anonymous way, this is easy to share and collaborate on.
That's absolute gold.
Yeah,
because
the bank's got that information, but there's no mechanism to easily kind of
I haven't heard of you before.
reach that insight, if you like, in both parties. So while initially there's kind of a clear seller and buyer in the relationship, quite often those roles get reversed, where actually now the retailer's interested in the bank's data just as much as the bank's interested in the retailer's
And you're
data.
right, why would you ever partner with your bank? I mean, I just can't think of any apart from to get a loan. And that's not really a partnership, is it?
No.
So it's kind of a one-way partnership, that one. But there's no other reason why you would. And I think that, again, it'll build some structure around that relationship, as well as, find out some true value in what you've got or that you're already sitting on. And what kind of numbers you look? Because I think they're sitting on a lot of data, restaurants. On average, someone was talking to me the other day, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of emails and whatever, or customers that they've had through the doors. Or through different various.
I mean, obviously the coffee chains like the Nero's, Starbucks, those are in the millions of customers. A restaurant chain with 100 sites, they're probably sitting on a few 100,000 customers that they'd have, depending if they have a loyalty program or not. Obviously, if they don't, they won't know who those customers are. But then again, if you've got card data, you could partner with your bank. There are ways in which they can look at how to kickstart that sort of data economy that they can benefit from,
and then
just by appropriately partnering.
And your AI knowledge or your expertise in AI, you're then, because that's actually built into Omnisient, isn't it? Obviously, there's something in the middle that the matching part is done by AI, I presume, or the overlaying.
We've got a smart a machine learning system that will look at if one customer's got email address, first name, postcode, somebody else has got cell phone, postcode, and some other piece of data. There are different ways that you can match that data to try and look at, what is the intersection of these customers. But that's, we'll be getting into a lot of technology
I won't do
down that path.
And then and you go through that process then, and obviously there's some value to the data that the customer is now aware of. And the next step is that they deal with the partner, they deal with the bank, whoever it might be. They do some kind of deal and off they go.
Yeah, the process is customer data seller puts their data into the platform.
Yeah.
We would then have our data scientists look at that data and see where do we think the value here is.
And what's that? Is that a long? I hate to put a timeline on it. Are they looking at a long period of time? How long does that take then from meeting you and giving you sharing my data? You've got to find a new word for sharing.
A new word, yeah.
Lending.
Depending on who it is.
Yeah.
If it's a tier 1 bank or retailer, they take a long time.
Yeah.
Getting the data in is simple. Getting over privacy and security is...
Yes, I imagine. A bit more difficult, yeah.
Yeah, because they want to know, is it safe? All the right questions. But we've done this globally with TransUnion, which is probably the hardest layer anybody can get through, to have a bureau that's prepared to collaborate with their data. So we know we can answer all those questions. It's just a question of, jumping through the hoops. Once you're through that, then it's quite quick. Getting data in is a few weeks.
And how is it delivered back to the customer? And how is it presented back to the customer in terms of what you've found out? Do you know what I mean? So, as in, I'm the MD of Chris's restaurant chain. You've looked at my data. Do I get back some kind of report that says XYZ. This is what.
There would be a report, but more often than not, we would come with a proposition to say we think this insurer is
Right. Okay.
is
So you would
interested,
start
this
that
bank is
matching
interested.
process.
Yeah,
Right. Okay.
That's so Omnisient. There are three things that make us unique when you put them together. One is that privacy piece.
Yeah.
The cryptographic encryption. Two is the matchmaking bit that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
And number three is that machine learning platform that allows the buyer to create quite a sophisticated model out of the seller's data and look at the intersection of them.
So that works. What that was talking about then is pretty much not done, but by the time you've gone through the process of looking at the data, you've done the matching or proposed the matching.
Yeah. And quite often we'll have another customer that's got a similar data set that we've worked with before.
I imagine that's quite common. Yeah, imagine.
So you know, okay, this kind of frequency of transaction with these sorts of purchases
that could work with
could be interesting to travel insurance or pet insurance or credit card or debit or whatever the
and where was it born?
proposition might be.
Wasn't born out of hospitality then? It was born out of
born out of the credit space. So
right,
the founders come out of the more the banking side. So I think that was the missing piece. Is retailers for a long time have been selling their data to their suppliers.
Yes.
The Unilevers
Me.
of the world. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What they weren't doing is selling that data to the banks.
Yeah.
But when you come from the bank world, the banks for many, many years have been trying to get their hands on grocery data because they know it's so rich.
Yeah, it's resilient, I suppose, because it is the most consistent thing a human will do, right?
Exactly.
It's eating.
It's very current.
Yeah.
You know right now, okay, somebody started buying X, therefore, we've all heard the stories about when the retailer knew before the dad did that the daughter was pregnant because of what she was buying.
Yeah.
We've all heard those stories, but that's true. Those things are.
I think that's the really fascinating part about it, how you can look at moments in people's lives potentially without knowing the person, without knowing the moment.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, without actually knowing what happened, and see changes in spending and changes in behavior, which I think is so crucial for
That's right.
Well, banks, retailers, whoever it might be.
The retailers have known this. Tesco's been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
There's no ways they would ever give that data to a bank or an insurer.
Not a chance, no.
They'd be compromising their customers, the integrity they have in the relationship that they built for 20 years.
Probably the most successful loyalty program on the planet.
And so having a way in which they can let a bank look at it without ever giving anything away, and the bank can come and say, this is what we want to do for your customer, and the retailer says, is this in the best interest of our customer? If they think yes, it is, hey, let's collaborate.
Very cool.
If they think no, they say sorry, we're not interested in that, whatever the use case is. And we've had many of those examples where the bank finds value or the insurer does, and
the other side says no.
If somebody's going to default on their credit card long before they default, if their spending patterns change.
Yes.
Or if they start buying lots of alcohol, down the line there's going to be an insurance claim.
Yeah.
But that's not in the best interest of the customer.
No.
So the retailer would say, hang on, while we know the data can be used for that, we don't want it to be used for that.
That's very cool. And this is all interlinked, I suppose, with when we look at AI and everything we talked about at the start of the podcast. And I am interested to see where you think that might go in terms of, because as you mentioned, there's lots of GBTs and chat GBTs or whatever, different versions coming out everywhere. Where do you think it will... Where do you think we'll end up, and how quickly will we end up there in terms of AI and what? And we talked about it a little bit at the start, not just in hospitality, but in general day-to-day use. Do you think? Because I feel like everybody's kind of on ChatGPT, or maybe I'm not right. Actually, my wife isn't, but I feel like a lot of my work friends are all using it now and kind of use it regularly. Where do you think it might end up?
I mean, on the AI side, I think we're going to go through a few waves. I think the next one is how do teams work together.
Yeah.
We've got individuals working, but it hasn't yet gotten to a stage where companies have a united kind of way of dealing with it.
Yeah, like an interface where we're all together. Yeah.
So that would be, I think, the next one. Like a team of engineers is a good example. You'll have individuals figuring out how this makes them better. We're not yet at the stage where teams are looking at how it makes that whole team more effective. So I think that's probably the next.
Yeah, I actually had an incident the other day when we were talking about something between our team and we were trying to take some data, weirdly. Maybe I should give you a ring. We were taking about 60,000 pieces of data and we were trying to work it through ChatGPT in chunks to see if it could do much with it. And it was quite interesting, actually. But then we were like, we weren't using the front end of the data. We were using the systems they use, their tech systems. So we were trying to get some patent out of it, but it kept breaking.
Yeah, this is a classic example where having your own private large language model that is trained on your data, can reference your data.
Exactly that.
And to me, that's the next step. Every company is going to get there, from the smallest to the largest.
Yeah.
Having a private space where their own machines, whether that's in the cloud or on their own hardware, doesn't matter.
It needs to hurry up. I mean, I genuinely believe that's one of the such an unlocking moment for a lot of companies, because I think a lot of companies just, especially in hospitality, we just kind of bounce through day to day and we kind of just get there. And then to have that power of understanding why we're doing what we're doing, what results we're having, and kind of where the successes and failures are, or where the opportunities are, without having to do too much Excel work, would be absolutely groundbreaking.
100%. And there, once you've got those together, then the number of use cases you can build on top of that is endless. From a simple, just your own private chat GPT interface that you can query,
and then say,
tell me about this, to a chatbot that sits on your website that can answer customer specific questions or company specific questions, to the performance management one we spoke about that middle managers can use to track how people are doing and have the right conversations.
It's exciting. I mean, I think it's brilliant. I mean, I think I've only really got involved. I've worked with a guy called Patrick, who's a large language model expert, like a grad from Oxford, like a super smart chap, a lot like yourself. And he talks a lot about where it's going and what he's doing, and he's built some incredible stuff with it already. And I think it's an opportunity that everyone is already grasping, but will probably be there quite quickly. Look, we only get half an hour with you people, and you're super interesting. What's the best way to get hold of you if I can send in my listeners your way? Do you have time for two?
So on the Omnisient side, it's omnisient.com.
Right.
And for the AI consulting, it's adega.com.
Adega, very nice. Is that your business?
That's my business.
That's your consulting business. Very cool. Look, thank you very much for coming in. Enjoy the sun. We've actually got, I think, 24 degrees today or something.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know. I'm in a dark room with egg cups on the wall. So that was JP, everybody, and we shall see you next week. Thanks, JP.